Hello, 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 beautiful and amazing people. How are you doing this evening? Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm so excited that you guys are here this evening. So tonight I have a short and sweet presentation for you. So if you want to know how to set up a trust fund and how to protect your assets and how to leave a legacy, then you have come to the right place because that is what we are going to be going over. My name is Christina Yvette. I am the founder of Seven Ways to Wealth. So it is a financial literacy company, and I am a trustee. I have been a trustee for the last 11 years. I'm a licensed financial professional and a licensed real estate professional. So I am not a licensed attorney and I am not a CPA. So I'm going to be teaching you about how to set up a trust as a trustee and how to operate it. Okay. So I have been operating a trust for the last 11 years. And the way that I actually became a trustee was through real estate. I was a registered nurse and I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I was very frustrated living paycheck to paycheck because I had a 1-year-old baby that I just could not take care of. So one day I was driving to work and this guy named Than Merrill, he says, do you want to learn how to flip houses? Come to my free seminar this weekend. So I signed up for the seminar. I went for 3 days and I learned so much about real estate that 6 months after the seminar, I end up establishing my LLC and buying my first property. So this property was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And this house was in beat up condition. I bought it for $89,000 and I end up selling it for $235,000. But before I sold it, my mentor told me, Christina, you need to put that house into a trust. And I was young, I was 25, I was scared, I didn't know anything. And I was like, what is a trust? Right. And so I didn't know that I was already doing it wrong, right? Just me buying that property in the LLC was already wrong. I already made a mistake. So I needed to correct my mistakes and I had to transfer that property into a trust. Why? Because it was being renovated and somebody could have slipped, fell, hit their head and end up suing me. And so me being young and this being my first property, I didn't want anyone to have the opportunity to be able to take this property away from me because I knew that this was like my ticket to freedom. And it ended up being my ticket to freedom because I end up setting up that trust, becoming a trustee, and I have been operating within trust and as a trustee ever since. So that is what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to teach you the steps that you can take in order to create your trust, right? So what are the steps? And then from there, the reasons of why you want to protect things like real estate, right? So without further ado, I quickly want to ask you guys, where are you guys tuning in from? So I am based in Atlanta. Where are you guys located? So you guys can put it inside of the chat. And then as I mentioned, I'm going to dive right into a short presentation. And then after the presentation, I'll be able to answer any questions that you guys might have. So I see Chicago. Okay, awesome. I was just in Chicago last month. Utah, Minnesota. I love Minnesota. I lived there for 6 months as well. New York, New Jersey. Love it, love it, love it. Texas. I love Texas. PA. Awesome, awesome. So we have people from all over the country, which is amazing, okay? So what I want you guys to know is that a trust is the most powerful entity in the entire world, okay? So you can operate a trust in any country, which is extremely powerful, right? And so what is an actual trust? Well, a trust is a contract, okay? And this contract has many different sections to it, and you have to go ahead and legalize this contract because it then becomes an entity. So a trust is an entity, it's a living, breathing entity just like you. You are a living, breathing entity. So a trust is seen just the way you are seen, which is powerful because what that means is that whatever trust can and cannot do, you also are the same, right? So if you can buy a house, a trust can buy a house. If you can buy a car, a trust can buy a car. If you can build credit, a trust can also build credit. If you can write a book, a trust can write a book. So there's no limitations to what a trust can and cannot do. It can do anything that you can do, which is powerful, okay? So now you have to establish this contract. Inside of this contract, there's a section called a declaration where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. And then you have your bylaws, which are the rules and regulations for how you want the trust to be operated, okay? So now that we know that it is a contract, now that we know that it is an entity, let's talk about the different parties involved in the contract, okay? So there are three parties involved in the contract. The first party is the grantor. The grantor is, you might hear the term settlor or trustor, but that is the person who creates the trust with the trustee. And that is the person who is going to place the first asset inside of the trust, okay? The next party is the trustee. That is the controller of the trust. That is the individual who has full control over those assets that have been placed inside of the trust. So they manage those assets. They have control over the trust funds, and they are the individuals that do the day-to-day operation of the actual trust, okay? So they do all the hiring and firing. Now, they are operating the trust for the benefit of somebody else. That other person is the beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust. Those are the individuals that are going to receive the assets that are inside of the trust once the trust is terminated, okay? But before the trust is terminated, the beneficiaries can receive distributions as well as gifts from the trust, okay? So now that we understand the different parties involved, let's go ahead and understand the different types of trust. So the first, I'm going to give you a list of categories. The first category that I want to give you is express versus implied. An express trust is a written trust, which means that it is in that physical contract that you feel and touch, okay, and that you're actually going to physically sign, okay, versus an implied trust, which means that that verbal agreement stayed oral or verbal, and it's not expressed in a contract, okay? The next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature, so there's less provisions, but the trustee is required to distribute all of the money that's inside of the trust, so it doesn't hold trust funds. Versus a complex trust, which means that it's longer in nature, there's more provisions inside of the complex trust, which means that the trustee can actually hold trust funds and is not required to distribute all of the money that's inside of the trust, okay? The next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that's not inside of the contract. So for example, if the trustee wanted to buy crypto tomorrow, they can do that even though it's not in the contract. Versus a non-discretionary trust, which means that the trustee is not able to make decisions or carry out tasks for the organization if it's not embedded in the contract. So it has to be in writing, okay? So the next category that I want to give you is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is where every state has its own statutes and codes. So with a statutory trust, what we're saying is that those state statutes and codes are embedded inside of the trust contract. So that means that that trust is limited to where it can only be used or operated in that one state. And that state is going to require that trust to be registered. And so it's going to be available on the public records. Versus a non-statutory trust, which means that there are no state statutes and codes embedded inside of the contract, which means that you can use that contract in all 50 states, plus all of the U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, things of that nature, okay? So with that, there is no limitations when it comes to the particular state, and it's not required to be registered in any one particular state. Now, the last category that I want to give you is revocable versus irrevocable. When we are referring to these types of categories, we're only referring to one party, which is the grantor, and we're saying that the grantor has either revocability or irrevocability. So let's talk about a revocable trust. So with a revocable trust, the grantor is also going to serve as the other two parties. That means that the grantor is going to be the trustee and the beneficiary. So because the grantor is all three, this type of trust is seen as their alter ego, which means that this trust is going to operate under the grantor's social security number. And if somebody is coming after the grantor, they are able to come after the revocable trust, which means that your assets, unfortunately, are not protected with a revocable trust. Okay. So if that trust was to end up in some type of litigation, then they could pierce through that trust and force that trust to have to be produced in court, right? Versus the other type of trust, which is an irrevocable trust. So that means that the grantor has irrevocability, which means that the grantor cannot make any changes to the trust, right? They cannot serve as the trustee and beneficiary, and they can't terminate the trust. And if they were to place assets inside of the trust, they cannot take those assets out, right? And so with that being said, because they have irrevocability, that means that they can't serve as the trustee and the beneficiary. And so if someone were to come after the grantor or the trustee, right, they are not going to be able to because of the status of it being irrevocable, because the irrevocable trust doesn't operate under the grantor social. It actually has its own EIN and it's seen as a separate entity. It's not seen as an alter ego, which is super important. Because if that type of trust was to end up in court, then they wouldn't pierce through the trust or force you to produce it in court. Okay. So let's talk about the steps that you need to take in order to create a trust. Now, step one is you want to determine the type of trust that you actually want to create. Okay. Now, when you are thinking about the type of trust that you want to create for either your business or maybe for your family, you want to create a trust that is bulletproof, that's going to hold up in court, that's going to actually protect your assets, okay? So with that being said, the type of trust that I recommend is that it falls under these following categories, okay? So it should be expressed, it should be complex in nature, it should be non-statutory, it should be discretionary, and it should be irrevocable. If it falls under those 5 categories, then it's bulletproof and your assets are going to be fully protected, okay? Which is what you want. Now let's move on to step 2. So in step 2, what we are saying is that you want to determine the name for the trust, okay? So 2 things to keep in mind. 1, do not name the trust after yourself. A lot of people make that mistake, okay? If their name is John Smith, they end up naming the trust the John Smith Trust, and then that's a dead giveaway. The second thing is that you don't have to have the word trust in the actual name. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to appoint the different parties involved. So you're going to appoint the grantor, the trustees, and the beneficiaries, okay? So you want to appoint yourself as the trustee, you want to appoint your children as the beneficiaries, and then you want to choose a successor trustee. That is the individual that's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you, meaning that if you become incapacitated, if you decide that you want to resign, or if you expire, if you transition, then someone needs to pick up where you left off. You need to have a succession plan in place. And so that is what the successor trustee is going to do. Now let's move on to step 3. So in step 3, you're going to actually create the trust agreement, okay? So that means that you need to establish that contract, okay? It needs to be an express contract where you're putting all of those provisions. Now, one provision that I want you to think about is spendthrift provisions. That is where you're going to put yourself in a position to where you're controlling the money from the grave. That is exactly what you want to do. If you're intentional about building a legacy, then you want to have full control over that money because you're the one that established the legacy. So if you have a spendthrift provision, let's just say that, so a spendthrift are the beneficiaries that decide that they want to blow all the money, right? And so you have provisions in place to protect that. So you'll have, let's just say, an education restriction to say that they have to get a college degree or they have to have some type of budgeting, bookkeeping, accounting, something like that. You can have a distribution restriction to say, hey, this money that I'm giving you, right, that you're receiving your distribution, it has to be spent on real estate or a business or education or living expenses, right? It can't be spent on, let's just say, tobacco and gambling and lottery and illicit drugs, right? So those are just examples of the restrictions that you want to put in place with the spendthrift provisions, okay? So now let's move on to number 4. So in number 4, we're going to go ahead and notarize that trust. Then that trust is going to be legalized and you can now operate it as an entity, okay? So it's going to require 2 signatures. It's going to require the grantor signature and it's going to require the trustee signature, okay? So the notary is going to go ahead and witness those 2 signatures and they're going to place their seal and now you can operate the trust. So now we're going to move on to number 5, because after that trust is ready to be operated, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to fund the trust. So that means that you need to establish a trust fund. So a trust fund is the bank account where you house the funds that belong to the trust, okay? So what you need to do is first you need to establish a banking relationship with a financial institution, okay? So now that you've decided which financial institution that you want to go ahead and open up that account, you can open up a checking account, a savings account, a money market account. You can open up a brokerage account or even what we call a cash management account. It could be with a bank, a credit union, or even a brokerage, okay? And so there's 2 things that you're going to bring with you. The first thing is your certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust actually exists. And then the second thing that you're going to bring with you is the EIN confirmation letter, okay? So with that, with the EIN confirmation letter, what's going to happen is that's going to allow you to have banking privileges, okay? So now you're going to fund the trust. And so some of these institutions, you can fund it with 0. Some of them you are able to fund it with as little as $100. Some their minimums are 500, 1,000. It just depends on who you decide to bank with, okay? But you'll go ahead and fund that trust account, okay? And then after that trust account is already open and funded, then you're going to move assets. So we're going to move on to number 6. So in number 6, you're going to transfer assets into the trust. Okay, and so what that looks like is, for example, if you have your primary residence, right? With your primary residence, what's going to happen is this property, when you bought it, you got a deed and that deed is in your name. You need to redeed that property over into the name of the trust. This is where people drop the ball. This is where they make the biggest mistake. This is where they get confused and they think that just because they listed it inside of the trust contract, that that property belongs to the trust. No, it doesn't. You have to convey that property by way of the deed into the name of the trust. That property has to be owned directly by the trust in order for it to be protected by the trust, okay? So please don't make the mistakes that I've seen thousands of other people make, okay? So now let's move on to the next slide. So why do you actually want to create a trust? For asset protection and for privacy, right? So a trust can protect you from what? It can protect you from bankruptcies, from divorce, from foreclosures. It can protect you from heavy taxations. It can protect you from lawsuits and from even probate. So there's 2 of them that I want to touch on this evening. So the first one is a lawsuit, right? So what I want you to understand is that we live in a very sue-friendly country, okay? And I don't want you to put yourself in a position to where you think that you're not going to get sued, or you are waiting until you get sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit, okay? A lawsuit can come out of nowhere. It's unexpected, right? Everyone you have to be thinking that everyone wants to sue you, meaning your neighbor wants to sue you, your employer wants to sue you, your employee wants to sue you, your sister, your brother, your best friend wants to sue you, right? Your clients, your customers, they want to sue you. You have to be thinking that way, okay? Because you don't want to wait until it's too far, too late, and now you're getting your assets taken away, okay? So I just want to give you a quick example. Let's just say that you are operating an LLC, right? And so an LLC stands for limited liability company, okay? And so you actually hear it in the name. So if you hear the word limited liability, that means that the company has limited liability. It tells you in the actual name of the company, right? So now, if the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other part of that liability? So go ahead and put it in the chat. So put it in the chat. Who do you think has the other half of that liability if the company has limited liability? So let me see what you guys are putting. All right. So Me, exactly. So that is right. So you as the owner of the business, right? If you put yourself as the owner of that company, then you too are liable. You have limited liability too, meaning that if something happens within that company and that company cannot cover what they're liable for, what the entity is liable for, then they're going to go after the owner. So let's talk about it, right? So let's just say that you are operating a candle business, right? And you went and sold a candle to this client online, and then their house ended up burning down, and then they're going to claim that it was your candle that burned down their house, right? And so now all they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website, look up your company, and boom, all of your information is available on the public records on the Secretary of State. So they know who the owner is. So now they go and initiate a lawsuit so that they can come after you for the house, for the price of their house, which is $500,000. So now there's a lawsuit, right? And so you think that you're all good and dandy because you have an LLC. But what you didn't know is that if that LLC can't cover that 500,000, then the judge can do something very unique, which is they can pierce through the corporate veil. That little itty bit of protection that you thought you had with the LLC, it can be pierced and they can go after you, the owner of the LLC. So then what's going to happen is they're going to go after you for the $500,000, right? So they can actually garnish your entire bank account. They can garnish your wages if you have W-2 income or 1099 income, and they can start to seize all of your assets, meaning your house, your primary residence where you live with your spouse and your children, right? If you have a car, if you have any other type of asset, right? They are able to seize those assets just to cover that judgment. So you don't want to put yourself in that type of position because you are going to be doing yourself a disservice as well as your family. So what you want to do is you do not want to be the owner of your LLC. You want a trust to be the owner of your LLC, because now if somebody tries to go after your LLC, then they will go after your trust, okay? Which is going to protect you in the long run. So take a quick look at this video.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost the career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my third bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
Okay, so do not wait until you are getting
That way.
sued in order to
Okay.
protect.
Okay. Nice, nice,
So
nice.
now, let's talk
Keep
about
it
the
in
next.
test on.
I said, hold on one second. Somebody is off of mute. Okay, thank you so much. All right. So remember I said that your assets are not fully protected unless they are in a trust, right? So I have a question for you all. So my question is, that house that you live in that's in your personal name, if you did not wake up tomorrow, how is that house going to be transferred to your son or your daughter or your spouse or whoever it is that you want that house to go to? So come off mute, let me know what's your answer. What do you have to say about this?
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. I have instructions in my will already taken care of. I own my
Oh,
property outright. I paid for it years ago. So far, that's what I've been able to do.
okay, that's a wonderful answer. So thank you for saying that. And I will touch on a will in just a moment. So a will is not going to transfer your property. It's going to take other efforts. So my question to you is, how is the property going to be transferred? So other people inside of the chat, they're saying a will, the owner, right? So let me go ahead and provide some insight, right? So think about it from this standpoint. If my name is on the deed and I transitioned, that means that I'm not physically able to sign the deed over to my son or to my daughter. So it's going to have to take a judge to be able to make that decision. Okay. Now, in a perfect world, we believe that that our instructions on our will is going to be carried out, right? And so that is ideal, but sometimes things don't happen in ideal fashion. Okay. So there's two things that I want you to know. The first thing is that it's going to take the decision of a judge to be, and that judge is the one that's going to decide if your son or your daughter receives the property. Okay. It's not your decision. Okay. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that I want you to know is that that judge doesn't know your son, they don't know your daughter, they don't know you, okay? So you are leaving it up to chance, to be very honest, right? So now let's touch on the will, because a lot of people think that their will is good enough, right? They think that the will is the end all be all, right? But I'm here to be as brutally honest as possible, okay? So your last will and testament is your last wishes, okay? So a will is a wish list. And on this wish list, you are putting, I wish my daughter will get my house. I wish my son will get my house. This is what you are wishing, okay? And so a will is a legal set of instructions that is designed to be carried out in the probate process in probate court, okay? So that means that if you leave a will behind, your family is automatically going to go to probate. Okay. Now, what I'm here to tell you is that you can put yourself in a position to where your family does not have to go to probate. So all of us are going to end up in probate, right? Unless we do one thing. And the one thing that we need to do is we need to create our estate now while we're living. So the only way for you to avoid probate is if you set up a trust, because that trust is still existing even when you transition. That trust is designed to outlive you. Okay. So now let's talk about the difference between a will and a trust. So the difference is that a trust is an entity, right? It can actually own things. A trust can own your house. A trust can own a bank account with cash in it. A trust can own a car. A trust can own jewelry, furniture, equipment, right? A will cannot. A will cannot own your house. A will cannot own a car. A will cannot open up a bank account with cash in it. So I'm here to tell you that a trust is superior to a will. Okay? So they're both legal contracts, right? But one is an entity and one is not. Okay? So now what you need to know that is so vitally important is that all of the instructions that you have inside of your will can go into the trust. All of those wishes, all of those desires, all of those instructions can go inside of the trust, and then the will becomes obsolete. You don't need it anymore because everything that's inside of the will is in the trust. And the trust is the entity that's designed to outlive you, meaning that when you establish this trust contract, right? You're going to say, hey, I want this trust to exist for 100 years. And so now the trust is going to be a viable contractual entity for the next 100 years. It's going to outlive you. It's going to outlive your son. It's going to outlive your daughter, right? And so that is the key component when you want to leave an inheritance to your children, when you want to ensure that it actually lasts the second and third and fourth generation, right? Because I'm here to tell you that our children are losing their inheritance. And the reason why they're losing their inheritance is because we don't have our affairs in order. And the reason why we don't have our affairs in order is because of the unknown. We do not know what we don't know. And so a lot of us we do not know that we can create our estate now while we're living. But instead of us creating our estate now while we're living, we are leaving it up to the state to do it, right? And so now let me go and share with you what the probate process looks like so that you can better understand it, okay? So let's just say that you have all of these assets, right? So you have the house, you have the car, you have $250,000 cash inside of the bank, okay? So let's just say you have these three assets, right? And these three assets are in your personal name, okay? And you didn't wake up tomorrow, right? And you just only have a will, right? So then what's going to happen? Well, the first thing that's going to happen is the state where you're a resident, they're going to create a living estate for you. Why? Because now they have to be responsible for those assets that you left behind in your personal name. Okay, so you were not responsible enough to create your own estate while you were living. So now the state of Texas has to do it. So if you're a resident of the state of Texas, the state of Texas is going to now create that living estate. So the state actually creates a living entity for a dead person. Okay, so now the state created the living estate, and let's just say your name is John Smith. So the state just created the John Smith estate, and the state went and transferred your house, your car, and the cash into that living estate. That living estate goes straight into probate court, okay? So the first thing that happens is there is going to be a probate attorney that is going to go ahead and represent your estate. Your estate is in the probate court system. And so what happens is the judge, right? The first thing that the judge does is the judge is going to cover your liabilities, meaning that the judge is going to use the funds that you have in your estate to cover your debt first, okay? So your debt gets paid off first. You're thinking that the first thing that happens is my kids get my house. No, it's not the first thing that happens, okay? So the first thing that happens is the judge is going to pay off your debt. So let's just talk about debt, right? So you had credit card debt that you left behind, right? Because you know what? Tomorrow is not promised, and we just don't know when we're going to go, right? So you need to be mindful of that, right? So you had credit card debt that you left behind. You had student loans from 25 years ago that you left behind, right? But the one thing that you did not think about is the medical bills that you acquired at the end of life. Do you know what those medical bills are going to look like? Let's just say you were sitting in the ICU for 10 days. Now you have a hospital bill of $300,000. And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, I have health insurance, right? The carrier, right? The insurance company, they want to be reimbursed. Medicare, Medicaid, those agencies are the first ones to go after your estate. They want to be reimbursed. So what is the judge going to do? Pay Medicare $300,000 for the medical bill, okay? But you didn't have $300,000 sitting inside of your bank account. So now what happens? The judge makes the decision to liquidate your assets. Now, we see this all the time. So if you sit here and think about it, right? How many times have you seen it to where people's homes are being auctioned off by the county? How many times have you seen it? If you literally right now go on Zillow.com, go on Realtor.com, and you see how many homes are for sale that are in probate court. Why? Because the judge decided to liquidate the house, right? To liquidate the assets. Why? Because the cash wasn't enough. So now that the house is up for sale, you have your children that are fighting inside of the court system to keep mom's house, to keep dad's house. They didn't know that the house was going to be liquidated in the probate court. And so they're either fighting each other or fighting the court system to keep your house, right? And that is why I'm telling you the brutal truth, which is our children are losing their inheritance because we do not have our affairs in order and because we're just leaving it up to the government to figure it out, right? So now what happens? Well, the house is liquidated, right? Now Medicare is paid off. Now what happens is out of the money that's left in the estate, you have attorney fees that are taken out. You have court fees that are taken out. Whatever is left over is what your children are going to receive. Your children are going to receive the leftovers, which is you doing a disservice to your children if you allow them to go through the probate process, knowing that probate can be avoided. There's only one way to avoid probate, and it's by setting up a trust estate while you're living. You have to set it up now while you're living. You have to transfer your primary residence into the trust. So now let me give you an example of what it looks like. When you decide, well, I'm going to set up my estate now while I'm living. I'm not going to wait and just think that my will is good enough and just let the state of Texas do it for me. No. So you create your trust. You transfer the house into the trust. You open up a trust bank account and you transfer that $250,000 into the trust, and you transfer the vehicle title into the trust. So now the trust has these three assets, right? And so now what happens? Well, guess what? You didn't wake up tomorrow. Well, it's perfectly okay that you didn't wake up tomorrow because everything remains intact. Why? Because you had a succession plan in place, which means that you appointed a successor trustee. The successor trustee is the individual that takes over after you. You were the trustee, you transitioned, so now your successor is going to pick up where you left off. They're going to continue to operate the trust. Remember, when you set up this trust, that trust is going to operate for the next 100 years. It's going to outlive you. And if you're smart, it's going to outlive your children as well. That is what you want. You want to set up an entity that is going to live many years into the future, right? So did the trust die? No, you died, right? And so what's going to happen is that trust is going to remain intact. The house is going to remain in the name of the trust. The trust fund still has the $250,000. Nobody took it. Nobody touched it, right? And your children are going to benefit from that $250,000 that's inside of the trust account. And the trust has a vehicle, right? And so now let's just say that the successor trustee is renting out the property, right? And so now what's happening? The trust is generating income, and the trust is now giving that income to who? The beneficiaries, which are your children. And your children get to avoid probate. They never have to step foot in court, not one day. Why? Because the trust didn't die. And so now they get to grieve in peace because they just lost their mother, the most important person in their life. I know because I lost my mother. She was the most important person in my life. So they get to grieve in peace instead of having to be dragged through the court system. You do not want your children to go through this. But if you don't set up a trust and get your affairs in order, your children will go through this. And guess what? The debt that you had at the end of life, that debt dies with you. The credit card debt, the student loan debt, and the medical bills, they die with you. Those creditors cannot come after your trust because you are not the trust and the trust is not you. They can only go after things that are in your personal name tied to your social security. So if those creditors cannot go after your trust, they have to discharge that debt. That is what you want for your family to avoid probate. And I'm here to tell you that the only way that that's going to happen is by setting up a trust. There is no other entity, no other contract that is going to avoid probate. An LLC can't avoid probate, a corporation can't avoid probate, and a will can't avoid probate. A will is designed to automatically go to probate and for the judge to look at it and say, okay, these are his wishes, but he doesn't know that he has hospital bills of $500,000 because he was on a ventilator. So that is what you want to avoid. So now let's dive right back into the slides and then I will open up the floor for Q&A. So give me one moment here. Let me share my screen.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. All right, so this is the wealth building formula. This is exactly what you came here for, okay? This is how you're able to build wealth for the next generation utilizing a trust entity, okay? So I have three pillars here. I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest, okay? So let's talk about structure. The first thing that I want you to know is that if you don't have trust within your structure, then you need to get trust within your structure. That means it's time to get restructured, okay? The second thing that I want you to know is that everyone should have a for-profit and a nonprofit within their structure, okay? So let me go ahead and share with you the three types of trust that I love the most, okay? So it's the ones that you see on the screen: a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Let's talk about the business trust, okay? So now the business trust is for our entrepreneurs and business owners and our investors, okay? With this type of trust, you can use it in two ways. The first way that you can use it is as a traditional business. So instead of you opening up that LLC and start to do, real estate or retail or e-commerce or sales or whatever kind of business that you're operating, what you can do is you can go ahead and establish a business trust and you can operate that business traditionally, okay, through the business trust. The second way that you can use a business trust is as a holding company, meaning that it is going to hold other entities like LLCs and corporations. So remember earlier when I told you that you did not want to have your company in your own name. So what you're going to do is you're going to establish a business trust. and then you're going to do an amendment to the articles of organization for that company. You're going to remove yourself as the owner. You're going to add the business trust as the owner of that company, because now the business trust is going to be fully liable for that company. You want to remove the liability from you. You don't want anyone coming after you because you're operating a business, okay? So now that we understand that the LLC is going to be fully operational and the business trust is going to act as a holding company to hold that LLC, let's just say that that LLC generated $100,000. Well, that LLC can do a K-1 distribution and distribute that whole $100,000 to the business trust. So now the business trust has the $100,000, and what is it going to do with it, right? Well, you have to understand that with a business trust, it can do something very unique, right? What you want to do is you want to spend the money first and be taxed on the leftovers, okay? So if you're going to do that, then what does it cost in order for you to operate a business trust, right? So you have what we call operating expenses that are going to be written off on the taxes, okay? And so let's just say that your operating expenses are about $30,000, right? So now out of the $100,000 that came in, you're writing off $30,000, which means that now you have $70,000 left, okay? So that $70,000 is principal and income. What are you gonna do with it, right? So you're going to be taxed on the $70,000. The tax bracket for a trust is between 10% upwards of 37%, right? Which is kind of high. So what a trust can do that is very unique from any other type of entity is it can distribute to the beneficiary. So let's just say that the trust wants to distribute that $70,000 to the beneficiary. Then what you're going to do is you are going to make the beneficiary of the business trust, you're going to make it the family trust. Why? Because if you're a business owner or entrepreneur, then the money that you're generating from the business needs to be used in order to provide for the family. So your family trust is going to be the beneficiary of the business trust. So now what's going to happen is that $70,000 is going to be distributed to the family trust, right? So now you're done paying taxes, because what happens is that $70,000 that goes to the family trust now has to pay taxes on that $70,000, okay? So on the business trust level, we had $100,000 that came in, 30 of it went into operating expenses and was written off. $70,000 of it went to a distribution to the beneficiary and was written off, right? And so now you have $0 left, which means that you're taxed on $0, which means that you have a 0% tax liability, okay? So let's move on to the next trust, which is the family trust, okay? So we know that the business trust is for business purposes. The family trust is for family purposes, meaning that your children are going to be the beneficiaries of the family trust. This is where you're going to put all of your personal assets, okay? Meaning your primary residence, your vehicle, if you have stocks and bonds, if you have an annuity, if you have life insurance, if you have jewelry, if you have furniture, if you have expensive handbags, right? What if you have heirlooms, if you have antiques, all of those things are going to go into your family trust, okay? Those are the assets that go into the family trust. Your children are the direct beneficiaries of that trust, okay? Now, let's talk about the money. So, $70,000 was distributed from the business trust into the family trust. So now the family trust received income of $70,000. Remember, the family trust is a for-profit entity, which means that you are going to spend the money first and then you're taxed on whatever's left over. So what does it cost in order to operate your family? Well, you have mortgage, you have taxes, you have utilities, you have insurance, you have, let's just say the beneficiaries have school fees, you have grocery, right? You have to put gas in the car, right? There's so many different components to deal with the assets that belong to the trust. You have to maintain those assets, okay? So you have maintenance, right? So let's just say that it costs $60,000 in order to operate the family trust, right? To manage and maintain, okay? So now what's going to happen is the $70,000 came into the family trust. You're writing off $60,000 in operating expenses. There's $10,000 that's left. You are going to pay taxes on the $10,000. Or there's one other component that I didn't share with you that you can do, okay? So when it comes to a trust, there's something called a charitable contribution, which means that you can donate that $10,000 and that's going to be a complete write-off for the trust, okay? So the trust is into charities, okay? So you're going to donate that $10,000 into a charity of your choice. And that's why you want to have a nonprofit within your organization, because a lot of us, we are into philanthropy, right? We are into providing for charitable organizations. And so that's why you want to establish a nonprofit so that you can do a charitable contribution from your trust into the nonprofit, okay? So you did a donation from the family trust into the tax exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So that is a complete write-off. So now what we're saying is 70,000 came in, 60,000 went to operating expenses and was written off, and 10,000 went to a charitable contribution and was written off, and there's $0 that's left, which means you have a 0% tax liability for the family trust. So now we're going to move on to the last trust. The last trust is a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. This is what we call a 508c1a designated trust. So it's almost identical to a 501c3 nonprofit. But the difference is that with this type of trust, right, you're automatically exempt from federal income taxes. You don't have to apply for exemption. The reason being is because of the separation between church and state. So that means that you can run this like a church, you can run it like a school, like an educational program, you can run it like a traditional charity, right? Where you're giving away meals to the homeless community. However it is that you want to run it, okay? So with this type of trust, you're able to do a lot for the community, but your other entities are able to donate to this type of charitable trust, okay? Now, the IRS will allow you, if you're a W-2 income earner, the IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to that trust as well. So if that's something that you wanted to do, then you can actually save thousands of dollars on taxes on the personal side, by donating a portion of your income, which is up to 60%, which means that now you're only going to be taxed on 40% out of your annual gross income, okay? So let's move on to credit. Now, the one thing that I want you to know is that when it comes to credit, right, you want to go ahead and leverage a second credit profile, okay? You want to use OPM, other people's money, in order to build wealth. That is what the bank is doing, and that is what you also need to be doing, okay? So instead of you only leveraging your personal credit, you also want to establish business credit. You can establish business credit for the business trust through the EIN. So it's the same business credit that you can get for an LLC and a corporation, you can get for a business trust, okay? It's off of the EIN. And you want to put yourself in a position to where you can qualify for lines of credit and credit cards, because that's going to allow you to use that money to be leveraged for assets, okay? So now let's talk about my two favorite assets, okay? So let's move on to the last pillar, which is invest. My two favorite assets are the index universal life insurance policies and real estate, okay? So with these two assets, you are able to become financially free, okay? So let me talk about the life insurance policy first. So a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they are dead. But in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when you are alive. There are living benefits. That's why it's called life insurance, and that's why it's not called death insurance, okay? And so you need to keep that in mind, because with this type of policy, you're able to build wealth with it, okay? So let's break down the reason why you're able to build wealth, okay? So the first thing is that with this policy, any money that you put inside of this policy is tax-free, okay? So that means that you are able to grow your money in this vehicle completely tax-free. The money that's inside of the policy is liquid. and your policy is considered an asset, okay? So the next component is protection, okay? Remember, that's what we're learning here. So when it comes to protection, if you have money inside of your policy, it is protected from, let's just say, lawsuits. So if somebody tries to sue you, they can't say, hey, you have $1 million in your policy, let's take out the $1 million. No, they can't touch not even a penny that you have inside of your policy, okay? So that's the first part of protection. The second part of protection is it's protected from losses, meaning that if the stock market crashes, well, guess what? Your money is not going to go down at all. You're not going to experience a loss, right? And so that means that your money is going to always be protected from losses, okay? So now let's talk about the next component, which are the benefits. Okay, so the first thing is that you have a death benefit. So when it comes to the death benefit, what we mean is that if I'm the insured, right? So my life is insured. If something were to happen to my life where I'm not living anymore, then there's a death benefit associated with my policy. Let's just say it's $500,000. That $500,000 is going to go to my beneficiary. So whoever I listed as my beneficiary, they're going to receive a payout or a check for $500,000 because my life ended, okay? So that's the first component when it comes to living benefits. The second component is, remember, my life is insured. What if something were to happen where I was diagnosed with cancer, or I had another type of terminal illness or chronic illness, or I'm bedridden and I can't get out of bed, or maybe I'm disabled, right? I had a heart attack, any of these things, right? I'm not able to work. Well, guess what? If I have $500,000 in my death benefit, the insurance carrier, they will let me access anywhere between 90 to 100% of that money, right? Which means that now while I'm living, and if I had a heart attack and I can't go back to work, well, guess what? They're going to give me $400,000 immediately, right? In order for me to be able to live and not worry about having to go back to work, right? So that is a part of the living benefits, okay? So now the last component that I want you to know about is this policy builds what we call cash value. Cash value is a separate account inside of this insurance policy where you're going to be accumulating cash, okay? Now, how are you going to accumulate this cash? Well, remember, you have a premium payment. Let's just say that your premium payment is $100 every single month, right? Well, depending on the way that the policy is structured. So it's so vitally important that your index universal life insurance policy is designed the right way, okay, in order for what we call maximum cash accumulation, okay? So now what are we saying here? Well, out of that $100, right, what's going to happen is if I designed it in a very specific way, then $20, this is just an example, $20 is going to go towards the life insurance carrier, and that's the cost of insurance. Okay, that'll go towards the insurance company to keep the lights on, as well as towards that death benefit. Okay, now the $80 is going to go towards my cash value. That means that that's what I'm going to be accumulating every single time I make a premium payment. Okay, so remember, I'm paying my premiums every single month. $100, $100, $100. Well, every single month I'm accumulating cash inside of my policy. And it's what? $80. So now it's going, my cash accumulation is going $80, $80, $80, $80. Okay, so that means that I'm accumulating a lot of cash. Okay, so that's the first component. Now, the second component is that because this is an index universal life insurance policy, this particular type of policy, not any other policy, okay? With this policy, because it's an index universal life insurance policy, that word index means something. It means that this policy is going to be tracking a certain index. What is that index, right? Well, that index is a part of the stock market, right? The stock market has many different indices, okay? You have the Dow Jones, you have the NASDAQ, you have the S&P 500, right? So let's just say that our policy is tracking the S&P 500. Your money is not going to be directly invested into the stock market. That's just way too risky. And the life insurance carriers, they are heavily regulated and they're not going to take that chance. But it's going to mirror the market. So what the life insurance company is saying is that whatever the market does, we'll go ahead and match it. So if the market is doing 11%, we'll give you an 11% return on your cash value. So now your money is not only accumulating, but it's also earning compound interest because it is tracking the S&P 500, okay? So now let's talk about this. When it comes to your cash value, right? Remember I told you if the stock market crashes, you don't lose any money. The reason being is because the insurance carriers, right? And there's many different carriers. So the insurance carriers, they are going to put a floor, right? And so the floor is meaning that the lowest amount of return that you can get. So the floor, let's just say, is going to be 0.75%, okay? But then they'll also put a ceiling, right? And so the ceiling, let's just say it's 12.5%. So if the market is up at 20%, then guess what? You'll get 12.5%, and whatever's left over goes to the carrier, right? But let's just say that the market is down. It's down 20%. Well, guess what? You're still going to make the floor. The floor is 0.75%. So once again, your money is protected, okay? So now how is it that we are able to utilize this with the trust? Well, the trust is going to be the owner of your index universal life insurance policy. The trust is going to be the payer of those premiums every single month for the $100. And the trust is also going to be the beneficiary so that that death benefit goes straight to the trust, okay? And you are going to be the insured, okay? Your life is insured. So that is how you want to set up your policy if you're intentional about generational wealth, right? And so you want to be able to leverage this type of policy. Why? Well, I'll tell you in the next slide, but what I want to tell you right here is that with this type of policy, right, you want to be able to leverage it because this is exactly what the banks are doing, right? So you want to park your money in places where it's going to grow, right? Where it's going to double and triple and quadruple. You want to put yourself in a position to where your money is working, right? And so your money is safer in an index universal life insurance policy than it is in the bank, okay? So you need to keep that in mind, okay? So now let's talk about the banks, right? Well, a lot of people, you have to understand when it comes to the banks, right? A lot of people think that the banks are getting rich off of, credit cards and mortgages and student loans and all this other stuff, right? But you have to study the banks. And we're going to do everything that the bank is doing, okay? So what is the bank's number one asset? I need you to look it up. I need you to Google it. Okay. So the banks, and we're talking about Wells Fargo, Chase, and Bank of America. Okay. The big three. The bank's number one asset is life insurance policies. Okay. So it's called BOLI, BOLI. Bank-owned life insurance. That is what you need to Google because that is what you need to practice. If the bank's number one asset is life insurance, what do you think your number one asset should be? And I'm going to, I want to hear from you guys. So come off mute, let me know, what do you think your number one asset should be?
Life insurance.
All right, Mariah. Yay. Okay, Mariah gets it. She's picking up what I'm putting down. I love it. So yes. Okay, so that's why I need you. Yes, Angela said it as well. Thank you. So if the bank's number one, right? And these are multi-billion-dollar organizations, okay? If the bank's number one asset is life insurance, your number one asset needs to be life insurance. That means that majority of your money needs to be inside of your policies and not sitting inside of the bank. What is your money doing in the bank? Think about it. Is your money working in the bank? No. Is your money working in the life insurance policies? Yes, your money is tracking the S&P 500. It's earning compound interest, right? What kind of interest is the bank giving you? 0.05%, right? And so you have to understand what the bank is doing. A lot of us, we don't even understand that our money, right? When we receive a direct deposit, right? It goes straight into our bank account. So it goes straight into Chase Bank. And what do you think Chase Bank is doing with the money? Come on, get off mute. Let me know what you think. What do you think? So let's just say today was Friday payday and you just got $2,000 direct deposit. What do you think is happening here?
They're using the bank is reinvesting it.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you guys are saying this. Okay, so we live in a fractional reserve system. You need to Google it. Everything that I'm telling you this evening, you need to Google, okay? Don't just say, oh, yeah, well, it just came out of her mouth. No, you need to Google everything, okay? We live in a fractional reserve system, which means that the banks are only required to have a fraction of that money inside of the actual vault, like actually on hand. So you think that you have $2,000 sitting in there, right? And of course, what we see is numbers on a screen. The money is not there. The money is, it already went. The minute that your employer put that direct deposit in there, it already went out and the bank deployed it wherever they wanted to deploy it. Okay. And so what does the bank do? Well, they go and lend it out for mortgages, for credit cards, for car loans, right? And they're getting double-digit returns on interest on those products, right? And then what are they giving you? Because you just lend them the money. You have to understand that the minute that you put a direct deposit into that bank's hand, you are giving them a loan. Did you know that? Did you know that you're loaning them your paycheck?
I had an idea.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Angela.
You're welcome.
Yeah, she said I had an idea. Exactly. Listen, I just helped somebody open up a bank account with Capital One like 2 3 days ago. And Capital One is like, yeah, if you do a direct deposit, we're gonna give you $300. And it's like, of course. Why is it that? Why do they want that? They want the direct deposit. The direct deposit is a loan. You don't even know that you're loaning them your hard-earned money, right? And so that is exactly what happens, right? And we have to understand that when that money goes, and so let's play let's talk about this, okay? I want to just break this down before I go to the next section, okay? Once I go to the next section, I'm going to be off into another planet, okay? So let's talk about this briefly. When your money goes into direct deposit, right? It's Friday, it's payday, you just direct deposit $2,000. What is the first thing that you do? What is the first thing that you do with the paycheck? Come off mute, let me know.
Start paying bills.
Thank you,
Your
Angela.
creditors. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I love the participation. Exactly. Okay, so Samsung said, pay bills. That's exactly what we do. So $2,000 just came in direct deposit into our bank account. And the first thing that we do is we pay the light bill, we pay the water bill, we pay mortgage, rent, we put gas in our car, we put groceries in our refrigerator. We do all of these things, right? And we never stop to think to ourselves, right? What we can do with the money, right? What can you do with the money? Because we've paid all of these organizations first, and then whatever is left over, what do we do with the leftovers? So if 2,000 came in and let's just say 1,500 just went out to bills, then what do we do with the leftovers?
Save some, hopefully. Put some in a savings account, a money market account or something. Yeah.
Exactly. So basically, we paid all of these companies first, and then we're left with the leftovers, and we let the leftovers just sit inside of our bank account, right? Not working, not doing anything. That money is dying inside of our bank account, right? And so what we need to do is we need to put ourselves in a position to where we're paying ourselves, right? And so that means that that money needs to go inside of our life insurance policy so that it can actually start working, right? So now that we understand that, let's dive right back in, and I want to go and talk about the next asset, okay? So my favorite asset in the world is real estate, right? That is the asset that I used in order to obtain financial freedom, okay? That was the very first asset that I invested in. That is the reason why I've been a trustee for the last 11 years. And that is the reason why I was able to retire myself as a nurse, right? And so I was able to retire myself as a registered nurse and stop working paycheck to paycheck, actually just in that vicious hamster wheel, right? Because of real estate. And I remember the actual day that I decided that I was not going to work, for the rest of my life, right? That I was actually going to retire myself, right? Because what is it that the government wants from us? Let's just be real. Well, if we buy into what society wants for us, what they want is for us to, and to be honest, we have been institutionalized, okay? So what they want for us is for us to work for what? 40 hours a week, right? For 40 years and retire when we're 65. And we have been institutionalized to do that because from kindergarten all the way to high school, we were institutionalized to go to a concrete box for us to be there for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. We have our evenings and we have our weekends. And so now, as an adult, we do the same thing, right? We work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We go to a concrete box. We're stuck there all day. And then we have our evenings, we have our weekends. So we've been doing this since kindergarten, okay? Let's just be honest. So that is what society wants for us, right? Society wants us to be in this position to where we are working these 40 hours for 40 years and we are retiring when we're 65. And I'm here to tell you that you don't want to do that. So one, you can retire young, right? And two, you don't have to be in the position to where you have to depend on Social Security. That is what society wants for us. Society wants our retirement plan to be that we're going to depend on Social Security. But I'm here to tell you that Social Security is not going to be around, right? Much longer. So we need to create our own retirement plan, right? And so the day I remember vividly, right? The day that I told myself I'm not going to depend on Social Security, right? I was 24 years old. I was working in the hospital and I was working with one of my coworkers. Her name is Audrey. And so Miss Audrey, she was exhausted that day, right? And that day, I basically had to take care of her patients and my patients because she didn't have the energy to do so, right? And so what ended up happening is I looked at her and I looked at how exhausted she was. And I said to her, I said, Miss Audrey, I said, when are you going to retire? I said, you have been a nurse for 40 years and you're 65. And she says to me, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I'm like, why not? Right? Why not? Like she fit the blueprint, right? And so I'm like, why not? You're 65. Like, isn't that retirement age? And she's like, yes, but I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half because then Social Security is going to give me an extra $300. And I looked at her and I said, Miss Audrey, I said, you're going to work for another 2.5 years for an extra $300? And she says, yes, Christina. And it was at that moment that I decided I am not going to be Miss Audrey. I am not going to wait to retire until I'm 65. I am not going to depend on Social Security. I am not going to work as a nurse for 40 years. Miss Audrey, she never made it home that day. She never made it to retirement. When she got off of work and drove out of the parking lot, she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room and she died on impact right there at the hospital. And that day changed my life forever because she didn't make it to 67 and a half. She didn't make it to collect Social Security. She didn't make it home that day because she worked herself to death, literally at the hospital. So I said to myself, I'm only going to give myself 10 years in this career. My career was very hard, right? I was working 12, 13 hours, sometimes 16 hours, sometimes 16 hours, very high stressful environment, right? So I said, I'm only going to give myself 10 years. And I was able to retire myself in 8 years because of real estate, right? So I'm here to explain to you the steps that you need to take when it comes to using a trust to build a real estate portfolio. So what you want to do is, I need you to know that a trust can purchase real estate, okay? A trust can get a mortgage. A trust can get a home equity line of credit, right? So let's just say that you want to be able to buy a duplex, right? Or a triplex. Let's just say it's a triplex. Well, that is, hold on a second. So let's just say you want to go ahead and buy a triplex. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in the position to where you can get a mortgage for an entity, okay? So the type of mortgage would be a DSCR, right? That's a debt service coverage ratio loan. So that type of mortgage is strictly for an entity and is strictly for an income producing asset that is non-owner occupied, okay? And that type of loan, you can get up to 80% of the purchase price. So let's just say that you secure the 80%, right? So now that means that you need to go find the 20% somewhere else, right? Well, remember we said that you want to leverage OPM, leverage other people's money, leverage the bank's money. So you need to do what the bank is doing. If the bank is using your money, you also need to use the bank's money. So that's why we previously said that you want to go ahead and establish business credit so that you are able to utilize the credit cards and the line of credit so that you can acquire assets, okay? So this is the strategy that you're going to use, okay? This is how you're going to build wealth. So let's just say that you were very intentional and that you went and established business credit, right? So now let's just say that you have a credit card for $50,000. What you want to do is you want to liquidate that credit card, okay? So there are companies out here that will allow you to liquidate the credit card, meaning you take the whole 50,000 out, okay? And now it's put right into your bank account. Okay, so now what are you going to do? Well, the first thing that you're going to do before you even think about using that $50,000 for the down payment for real estate, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to flow that $50,000 into your index universal life insurance policy. So now your cash value just went up by $50,000. Now you are putting that money to work, right? And that's what you need to do. So I want you, this is going to take a mindset shift, okay? Because we've already been trained into thinking that we have to work for money when we don't. So what I'm here to tell you is that your money needs to work for more money, okay? But that means that you have to put the money in the right place. So we have a line, we just liquidated that credit card for 50,000, right? And so now that 50,000, we put it inside of our index universal life insurance policy. Now the cash value went up by 50,000. Now that 50,000 is earning compound interest, right? It's mirroring the S&P 500, and let's just say we're getting 12%. Now you're earning 12% return on that $50,000. That's what you need to do. You need to park the money in places where it's every single dollar goes out and it brings back a friend. So that means that every single dollar is going out and bringing back 12 cents, right? That's what you need to do because now the money is working hard for you, okay? So now that we have parked the 50,000 inside of our IUL, remember, we have a real estate closing in a couple of days. We need that money. So what we're going to do is we're going to contact the carrier and we're going to say, hey, carrier, I need a policy loan. And they, remember, your life insurance policy is liquid. Your life insurance policy is an asset, right? And so the life insurance carrier, they're going to be like, okay, let me see what you have inside of your cash value. Oh, okay. Yeah, you have over $50,000 inside of your cash value. We'll give you a policy loan, right? And so now the carrier has issued you a policy loan, right? Based off of your cash value, what you have in there, right? And so they just did a direct deposit for $50,000 right into your bank account, right? But they did not touch your cash value. That policy loan came from their bank account. That policy loan came from their reserves. They're lending you their money. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization, okay? Your 50,000 is sitting inside of your cash value, still earning compound interest, still earning the 11, 12%, still working. And now you have 50,000 inside of your bank account from a policy loan. So now you need to deploy that $50,000 into its second place. Okay, it needs to be working for you again. So now the $50,000 is going right into that down payment that you need for the real estate. So now you're going to go ahead and you closed on that triplex. So now you have an income producing asset, which is a triplex that is going to be working for you and it is owned by the trust. So now what's going to happen? Well, it's the first of the month. You're collecting rent. 2,000 from door number 1, 2,000 from door number 2, 2,000 from door number 3. That's $6,000. So come off mute and let me know where you're going to put the $6,000. Where is the $6,000 going to go?
Back into the policy.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Thank you so much. So the $6,000 goes straight into the policy. That is you paying yourself first. Remember, it takes a mindset shift. We are not going to pay the mortgage first. We're not going to pay the utility company first. We're not going to pay the homeowner's insurance first. We're not going to do that. That $6,000 is going straight into our IUL, and we're going to park it in the first place where it's going to be earning compound interest. Then we're going to take out a policy loan. Let's just say they give us 5,500. They're gonna give us 5,500. It's gonna go direct deposit into our bank account, and then we go pay the mortgage. So you have to put that money in the place where it's going to be working. You have to decide, hey, I'm gonna pay myself first before I pay Bank of America. I'm gonna pay myself first before I pay the utility company. I'm gonna pay myself first. And so you have to go ahead and put that income into your IUL first. That is how you're going to build wealth, because the money is going to be growing. It's going to be doubling, tripling, quadrupling. Why? Because you have it working for you in the right places. You have it working for you in real estate. You have it working for you in your index universal life insurance policies. Okay. And so now what you want to do is you want to rinse and repeat. So I'm here to tell you that you do not have to use any of your own money in order to purchase real estate. I did not use any of my own money. I got 100% financing, 0% down. That is what you want to do. A lot of people think, oh, I need this big down payment. No, you don't. What you need to do is leverage OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. Leverage the credit cards, the lines of credit, the mortgages. Leverage it. Get 100% financing, so that you're able to do what? Rinse and repeat. You're able to do it again, right? So you already got your first triplex. You do it again. You repeat the steps. You get the second triplex. You get the third triplex. That is how you're able to build wealth for the trust, right? All of these assets are owned by the trust. They're not owned by you. Okay? The trust owns the triplex. The trust owns the insurance policies, right? So that is what you want to do. So let's dive right back into the presentation so that I can land this plane, okay? So you want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, right? That is the definition of stewardship. That is what you want. You want to be a good steward of the wealth. You want to be a good steward of the assets that we were just explaining, right? Versus ownership. Remember, society has programmed you a certain kind of way. So what has society programmed you? Society has programmed you to think like an owner and for you to be the proud owner of everything. So that means that I'm the proud owner of the bank account. I'm the proud owner of the house. I'm the proud owner of the car, right? And so society wants you to do what? If you want to do anything in society, you have to do what? You have to put your name and your social security on everything. If you want to get a job, name and social, please. If you want to get a bank account, name and social, please. If you want to buy a house, name and social, please. If you want to enroll in school, college, name and social, right? You need to move away from that. That was designed for a reason. Why? Because they would like to track you, right? Your social security, that 9-digit number is a tracking system, right? They're able, do you think it's miraculous that they're able to know everything that you have? No, it's not. It's because you've tied it to everything. They're able to see it, right? So you need to move away from that system, and you need to move away from ownership and into stewardship. Because at the end of the day, you have to realize, right? This beautiful house that you have, right? This beautiful house that you have, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So it wasn't ownership of the house that you wanted. It was control of the house while you were still alive. That is what you want. And so a trust can give you that. A trust can give you full control over that house, over that bank account, over that vehicle while you're alive, because you're going to be operating as a trustee. So now how do you actually transfer wealth? Well, you're going to transfer wealth by way of trust certificate units. They're just like stock certificates, where stock certificates represents ownership of a corporation. Trust certificates represents beneficial interest of a trust. So let's just say that you give me 25 units, then that means that I have 25% of beneficial interest. If this trust is worth $1 million, my beneficial interest is equivalent to $250,000 because I have 25 units. So now, that's vitally important because now that is how you're going to leave generational wealth is through those units. Because if I'm your beneficiary and then I transition, my units are going to go to my children. And then my children's units are going to go to their children. And that is how you're going to transfer wealth from one generation to the next. But I'm here to tell you that people are not transferring wealth this way. That's why 90% of wealth is being lost by the second generation. Why? Because they don't have trust, right? Because they don't have trust within their organization, and that is what you need. That's the missing component, right? Have you ever thought to yourself, how am I going to preserve all of this wealth that I have, or all of this money that I have, or this asset, right? Your house is your biggest asset. How are you going to preserve it for the next generation, right? And so you have to think about that because there are two tools that you need when it comes to preservation of wealth. The first tool is a trust. The second tool is life insurance. You have to understand that a trust is going to insure everything. The trust has a house, so it has homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. The trust has cash in the bank, it has FDIC insurance. So you are what we call a human asset. So the trust needs to insure you, right? So the way that it is designed for preservation of wealth is that the trust is going to take out a policy on every single person associated with the trust, meaning take out a policy on the trustees, on the co-trustees, on the beneficiaries, and on the future beneficiaries, right? So who are the future beneficiaries? Those are what we call trust fund babies. A trust fund baby is a baby that is born into the trust organization, okay? When that baby is 15 days old, the trustee is going to take out a life insurance policy on that baby. And now the trust is paying that premium every single month. $100, $100, $100. Well, guess what? This trust fund baby is going to grow up one day, right? So that trust fund baby is now 18 years old, right? And so this trust fund baby is going to college and they need a new set of Hot Wheels in order to get to campus. So because that trust fund baby is a beneficiary of the trust, right? They can easily go down to the dealership, pull their credit and get into a high interest car loan and start paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car. Or what they can do is, because they're a trust fund baby of an organization, they can go to the trust and they can request a loan for $30,000. Now that trustee can cut them a check for $30,000 so that they can go pay for their car cash. But remember, we want these trust fund babies to be responsible financially. So we're going to tell them, hey, instead of you paying the dealership $1,000, you're going to pay the trust $300. So now the trust fund baby is paying $300 a month to the trust, which is very financially responsible. But let's just say that the trust fund baby decides, I don't want to pay the trust anymore, and defaults. Well, it's okay that the trust fund baby defaults. One, they're not going to get a loan anymore. But two, the money did not originate from the trust fund. The money originated from the life insurance policy of that beneficiary of that trust fund baby. The minute that that trust fund baby requested a loan, the trustee went and contacted the insurance carrier and got a policy against that beneficiary's life insurance policy. And that policy loan was for $30,000 that was directly deposited into the trust fund. And then the trustee was able to issue out the check to the beneficiary. Now, what I'm here to tell you is that the reason why that was a risk-free loan is because the money does not need to be paid back. The money from a policy loan does not need to be paid back. It's automatically going to be deducted from the death benefit. So if there's a death benefit of $5 million, then that $5 million is going to go straight to the trust fund minus $30,000. And that is how you want to set up your preservation and conservation, right? You want to put yourself in a position to where Because we are human assets in the trust is going to insure us. And if anything happens to our life, that death benefit goes straight to the trust. The trust needs to be compensated for that loss. The trust is devastated. So if I have a death benefit of $5 million and I don't wake up tomorrow, that $5 million is going straight to the trust. That's why it's so vitally important that a trust insures all of the individuals that are inside of the trust, meaning the trustees, the beneficiaries, the future beneficiaries. So that is what you want. So these are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do is a really good book that teaches you about the marriage between trust and life insurance. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2 is a really good book that teaches about trusteeship. Family Wealth is a really good book that teaches about you running your family like a business. You are the CEO of your family. Your spouse is the CFO of the family. Your children are secretaries. And the last one is the complete book of trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust. There are hundreds of different types of trust. So you have to choose the right trust for you and your family, for you and your business.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days. Don't own anything, control everything. That is the sentiment. It seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. This has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So we can work together. I do have a program that teaches you step by step how to set up your trust estate so that you're able to protect your assets. So you can get to choose between either you wanting to do it yourself or you want to do done with you, okay? So do it yourself is our on-demand course where you get to enroll into the course, you get lifetime access to the course, and you get access to the 3 trusts that we spoke about earlier, which is the business trust, the family trust, and the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Right? So inside of the course, what you're going to do is you're going to watch the modules, you're going to download the trust templates, and you're going to set up your trust. Okay. And so it is very, very, very thorough. And you also get ebooks. So the books that I just mentioned in the previous slide, you get those books electronically as well as resources. So all the resources that you need in order to efficiently and effectively operate a trust organization, meaning that if you need to transfer real estate, we give you the quick claim deed. If you need to transfer a vehicle, we give you the bill of sales. If you need to be able to file for taxes, then we show you step by step how to do that with the 1041. If you need to have a board meeting, we show you step by step how to have a board meeting. We give you the templates. If you need to open up a bank account, whatever it is that you need to do for your trust organization, we provide you with the resources. We provide you with the templates, right? You don't have to go figure it out on your own like how a lot of people have been doing. And I talk to hundreds of people every single day. And they are making so many mistakes. People literally think that their assets have been transferred into a trust just because they put it inside of the contract, right? And so I don't want you to make those mistakes, right? We also have a community. So there are over 2,000 trustees in the community, and you get access to them in our private Facebook community as well as the Telegram chat. So we are texting back and forth on Telegram every single day from morning to night. Okay. And so these individuals are people that are in your city. They're in your state. They've been operating their trust for the last 5 years. They have their assets in the trust. They're protected. They have businesses. They have bank accounts. They have everything that you can possibly think of. Those are your community members. Those are your fellow trustees that you get to do life with, okay? That's why we give you lifetime access, because we're building a community here. We don't want for you to just come in and, and figure it out and then just go, right? No. So we are a family here. So what you get to do is, like I say, you get full access to the course. It's on demand. It has like the 43 video modules. I'll show you exactly what it looks like in just a moment. And the course is only $997. So we got to make it affordable so that you can get access to this information, okay? The next option is Done With You. Done With You is where we do it in a workshop style setting, okay? So that means that it's 5 days long. It's live on Zoom. So just like how we're live right now on Zoom, it's going to be a group of individuals that's going to be live on Zoom. Our workshop is starting in a couple of days, okay? It's literally on Monday, right? And so what you want to do is you want to be able to attend all 5 days. It is from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. On Monday, we're going to focus on the business trust. So what I do is I break down every single paragraph of the trust so that you can understand the contents of the trust. I'm here to tell you that you are not going to know how to operate a trust if you don't know what's inside of it. You're not going to be able to do it. And so that's why I'm here to encourage you and empower you so that you know, yes, I can operate as a trustee. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Yes, I'm confident in this, right? So that's why it's important that I break down every single paragraph so that you understand what is inside of my trust. There's 50 pages here. I'm overwhelmed. I don't understand, right? So after I break down every single paragraph and I teach you exactly how to set it up, then I open up the floor for Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you might have, right, based off of that information. So on Monday, we focus on the business trust. Tuesday, we focus on the family trust. So same thing. I break down every single paragraph. I show you step by step how to fill out that indenture, and then we open up the floor for Q&A. Wednesday, we focus on the nonprofit tax exempt trust. Then I show you how to get your nonprofit EIN number and how to go down the ordination process if you would like to, right? And so in this group setting, right, it is so powerful for you to be on Zoom with a group of other individuals because they are asking good questions. They're asking questions of things that you didn't even know that you wanted to know. And so you actually get to learn more by being in that environment. On Thursday, right, we focus on OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. Remember that. So one, I'm going to show you how to get your EIN with the IRS for banking purposes. Then I'm going to give you a list of banks, right? And then I'm going to show you the exact procedure that you need to take in order to open up your bank account. Then I'm going to go through banking operations. And then I'm going to show you how to have a board meeting, right? Because you need to be properly documenting everything dealing with your trust, right? There are people who are operating entities like LLCs and corporations, and they've never had a meeting for it, right? But we show you how to do it the right way here. And then I'm going to show you how to document how much you're going to fund the trust with. And lastly, our educator, which is our funding manager, he's going to come in and he's going to teach you step by step how to build business credit and business funding so that you're able to get the money that you need to acquire the assets. We really want to show you step by step how to acquire the assets, right? Specifically the life insurance policies, specifically the real estate, right? But you need the funds in order to do that. That's where the OPM comes in. That's where our funding manager is going to teach you step by step. He's going to answer all of your questions, right? And so it's so important to be in that environment, as I mentioned. And then let's move on to Friday. So Friday, what's going to happen is we're going to focus on asset protection and trust taxes. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to take an inventory of our assets so we know which assets qualify to go inside of the trust and which don't. I'm here to tell you that not every single asset qualifies to go inside of the trust, okay? So you have to learn this information. The next thing is that we show you how to transfer real estate into the trust. We show you how to transfer vehicles into the trust. We show you how to transfer businesses into the trust. And the last component is dealing with taxes, right? So our CPA comes in and teaches you step by step how to file taxes for the trust, right? It's a 1041. That's the name of the form. And he shows you how to fill out that form. He answers every single tax question that you could possibly have in your mind, right? And then I'll go ahead and answer all of your other questions. And that is the workshop, right? It is live and it's intense, right? But you get the clarity that you need. And my team, they hold you accountable. So that's why I'm not the only educator in the program, right? You have other educators involved. So with the done with you still get access to the course, right? So you get your login credentials because there's some foundational education that we need you to get started with now so that you can prepare for the workshop next week, okay? So we are going to hold you accountable. So my team, they're going to contact you. They're going to hold you accountable because we're going to make sure that you actually reach the finish line, that you're actually able to achieve your desired outcome, which is what? For you to protect your assets, right? And so you want that confidence to know, yes, I'm doing it the right way, right? And so the workshop is only $2,500. So if you are interested, then you will definitely go to the website. It's wealthytrustee.com.
I just wanted to say another thing too. So she's 100% because I've been to probate and it's not fun. It's not fun and it's very costly. So what she's charging is pennies. I mean, I actually paid $5,000 for probate. And it took a whole year and a half for us to sell our house. And my husband was the only son that she had. So the house, you would think it would automatically go to him, and it didn't. We still had to go to probate, spend $5,000, go to probate, and we had to pay the mortgage for a whole year and a half. So it was a mess, I'm telling you. And she's only asking, what, $2,500 for the program? It is just not expensive at all. Trust me, it is a lot of information, so you have to be ready. Listen to the tutorials that she gives you because you could be prepared because it's a lot of information, but she's very thorough. And I appreciate you so, so much. And then I found out my husband, we did this a while ago, about 10 years ago. We spent $7,000 for an attorney and it was trash.
So if you guys are interested, then go to wealthytrustee.com. You can send us an email at info@7waystowealth.com, and then you can visit us on social media and you can call the number that is on the screen. So what I want to do is I want to show you what a template looks like, and then I also want to show you what the program looks like, and then I'll answer all of your questions. So hold on, let me get back over here. So this is what the template looks like. Okay, this is what we're going to be breaking down in the workshop. Okay, everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing for your organization. Okay, so as I mentioned, you're going to get access to the business trust for my entrepreneurs. You're going to get access to the family trust for those of us that have family or personal assets, and you're going to get access to the nonprofit tax exempt trust for charitable endeavors, for philanthropic endeavors, for donations, tithes, offerings, gifts, things like that, right? So let's move on, and I'm going to show you what the course looks like. So this is the course, right? And you get lifetime access, okay? We don't kick you out after a year. Like, this is a forever thing for us. So what happens is after induction, you go straight into trust entities so that you can learn what a trust is, okay? You have to know the ins and outs of this type of contractual entity, okay? Then you learn the different parties involved: grantor, trustee, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the benefits of a trust, the different types. Then you start to dive into the actual trust. So you go into the tax exempt trust, you go into the family trust, you go into the business trust. So you learn, I break down the indentures, I break down everything so that you can set it up properly. Then we get into taxes, right? So you learn how to operate exempt. You learn about distributable net income. You learn how to avoid tax evasion. You are not evading taxes, right? You are paying your taxes, right? And that's why we have our CPA that teaches you step by step exactly how to do it, okay? Then you're going to asset protection, right? So asset protection is where we have taken inventory of our assets. Then we go and open up our bank accounts, our brokerage accounts. We transfer our house, our car, our insurance policies, our businesses. We have board meetings, okay? It's so important for you to document every component because at the end of the day, this is an entity that you're operating, okay? This is not you. Once again, it takes a mindset shift for you to say, hey, I'm operating as the authorized signatory, which means that I'm the trustee. I'm doing things on behalf of the trust. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the trust, right? And then we get into wealth creation, okay? So you learn how to establish that business credit, and then you learn how to invest in the stock market and how to do infinite banking with the life insurance policies. Then we go into Legacy Crest, and then you have your resources and your ebooks, okay? So that is the program. If you guys are interested, then you can just go into the website as I mentioned. And for those of you guys that are serious, what we'll do is for the next 24 hours, you guys can get 20% off using the discount code TRUST20 if you're intentional about getting into the workshop. And for those of you guys that are unable to fully enroll, if you put a $200 deposit, then you are able to secure that 20% discount. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I know that you guys have questions, unless I was super thorough and you have no questions. So let me know, does anybody have any questions based off of the information that I went over in this evening's webinar? Okay, Mariah, how are you?
So good, so good. This is a blessing and it's right on time.
Yay! So glad to hear
Yes,
that. Thank you for
it's
being here.
everything. I'm sold. When I have the funds here, I'm gonna definitely, I want to jump in on Monday, but we'll see.
Yes.
But
Okay,
definitely put
absolutely.
myself.
We will love to invite you into the community at any point in time, okay? But if you're able to do it sooner, then let's just hit the ground running on Monday. But like we're in open door and you're gonna have a great experience, like just with the other people that's in the community. So there's
Yes,
thousands of us and you'll love us.
excellent. I have some questions for you.
Yes, go for
Um,
it.
Okay, can you use your current registered agent address in Wyoming for the trust?
Yeah, you can choose. So when it comes to the trust, you can choose the domicile and you can choose any domicile that you would want. So if you want to choose Wyoming as the domicile, that's completely fine.
Okay, but you need a registered agent for that, right?
Yes,
Yes, okay. Can the ministry trust invest in market and real estate?
absolutely. Any investments, there's no restrictions.
Okay. Will these trusts work for institutional wealth levels?
Like,
Like, you know, 9 figures and up? Yes,
oh,
okay, just
okay.
checking. Just
Yes,
checking.
yes.
What information is required for your board members on the 508c1A?
Okay, so you want to be able to qualify them. So it depends on their position, right? So some people they want individuals to be bonded, especially if they're like in the treasury. Some people they want them to have previous experience. So when it comes to the board members, the positions are secretary, treasurer. You can have a general trust manager. You can have chairpersons. So it depends on how you are structuring it and the positions that you want to fulfill. So they are optional and you get to pick and choose because it has to be customized based on your organization.
Okay, okay. Um, let's see. Can you put, say, an asset that you've been holding for longer than 12 months? It's gonna appreciate in value and, you know, be a capital gain. Let's say a foreign currency you purchased 10 years ago. Can you put that in your ministry trust and be tax exempt on that?
So, the ministry trust does not exempt you from capital gains. So
Okay,
you are still subject to those capital gains. The other thing with the ministry trust is that automatically it exempts you from federal income taxes, but you would have to qualify for other forms of exemption. So that could be sales taxes, that could be property taxes, that could be on the state level. Any other forms of exemption that you would want to go through, you have to go through those traditional application processes. But no, so there is a difference between like donations and offerings and gifts versus traditional income and capital gains. So dividends, capital gains, that is traditional income. Anything over $5,000 you do have to file taxes for the ministry trust.
Okay, so it'd be safe to say to put that in the personal trust, since it's a personal investment, right? Convey that there.
Absolutely.
Okay. If you had a foundation, where would that go in your structure?
So you're going to keep it on the nonprofit side with the 508. So those two organizations will work together.
Okay, in tandem or two separate
No,
entities?
so yeah, no, they're two separate entities, but they'll work together. So meaning that usually what our community members do is their foundation will be the beneficiary of their 508.
Oh, okay. Okay, just a couple more questions. How do you legally gift a relative from the family trust? Like a distribution draw? Is that how, like,
Mm-mm.
or how would you do that? It would have
You
to come
want
from your personal
you want to do what? You want to gift them?
gift. Yeah, if you wanted to gift,
Are they a beneficiary?
yes, they are.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's already inside of the indenture that beneficiaries can receive gifts.
okay. Can the grantor also be a beneficiary?
It depends on the type of trust. So remember, I gave you different categories. So if it's revocable, yes. If it's irrevocable, no.
Okay, okay. Is it unwise to have all three trusts at the same financial bank institution?
So that is optional. So if you are an individual that's concerned with commingling funds, then it's wise to have them in three separate institutions.
Okay, okay. And can you have more than one trust bank account, like say one at Chase and one at Wells Fargo? You can do
So a
that?
trust can do anything that you can do. So can you have multiple checking accounts?
Yes, yes. And then
All
the last
right.
question, is it unwise to have the same person be the grantor for all three trusts?
No, that's perfectly fine. These are separate entities and you have to think in that fashion.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mariah. All right, next we have JT Frazier.
Greetings. Thank you
Hi,
for
how are
sharing.
you?
I'm doing good. We enjoyed the presentation. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here this evening.
If you want to do business outside of the US, does this trust help you in any manner?
It depends on the jurisdiction. So, it depends on where you want to do business and if that jurisdiction will allow for you to use a foreign trust.
Okay. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any questions inside of the chat. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who stayed throughout the entire webinar and take action on the information that we provided this evening, because it could be your new form of doing business. It could be your new form of saving on taxes. It could be your new form of leaving an inheritance and a legacy for your family. A lot of people think that leaving a legacy has to do with, oh, I'm leaving the house to my children. No, it has to do with what you put inside of that trust, right? It has to do with the position that you are putting them in, right? So these your children, right? They're going to be raised as beneficiaries. They're going to be raised as future trustees, right? And so you need to know that you're going to be changing the trajectory of your kid's life, of your kid's life, right? And so that is what you want to do. You want to put your family in that position, okay? So it's extremely powerful, and a trust can help you do that, okay? So someone said the program has to be paid in full before starting. Yes. The program does need to be paid in full before you get started or access to any of the course material. And we do have payment plan options available. So you can either use the payment plan options that we have on the website, or you are able to customize your own payment plan, okay? So just go ahead and contact us via phone or email, and the team will be able to assist you. So let me see here. I see another question. So to protect assets, LLC is the asset owner. Then create a trust inside of the LLC. So no, this is incorrect. So you don't want the LLC to be the asset owner. You want the trust to be the asset owner. Okay. So if your LLC owns the house or any other asset, it's going to end up in probate. Okay. So you want those assets to be directly owned by the trust. Okay. How do you transfer the assets like the property? So yeah, you can transfer it by transferring the deed, and yes, you can use a quick claim. All right, you guys have a good, you have a wonderful Wednesday. Good night. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys, and I am looking forward to welcoming you into the community and for us to be able to, for you to be able to join us in the workshop that we have coming up on Monday, okay? One thing I forgot to mention is that you get lifetime access to the workshop. So we do the workshops every 4 weeks. So our next workshop is August 3rd to the 7th. And then the workshop after that we have is in September. So it's the first week of September. So you get lifetime access. That means that you can attend in August, September, October, November, December, all of 2027. So just keep that in mind. So when I say that we want to do life with you, we really do. And the reason being is for retention, right? So that's why we let you attend multiple and unlimited workshops, because we want you to be able to hear the information multiple times so that you can retain the information, because that builds up your confidence level, right? Because it's not easy operating a trust, but if you have the proper training, then it will be easy for you.